But for our purposes, let's get some things understood here. Let's get on the same page together. And the first thing we need to do is talk about this idea of management. Because management and stewardship are the same thing. What a steward does is manages the resources of someone else on their behalf. That's the whole idea of stewardship. That you and I are managing the resources that our God has provided in our lives. We're managing them as if they're our very own, but the truth is, it all belongs to God. That's kind of the key to understanding this whole thing. It all belongs to God. So our bank account and our paycheck and our car and our house and the clothes that we're wearing and the things that we enjoy, the very breaths that we are breathing, the heartbeats that we are enduring, the electrical impulses that are firing waves through our brains right now, all of it belongs to God, and it's on loan. It's entrusted to you and to me to steward or to manage. And when it comes to this parable, we have the rich man, and the rich man stands for God, and the rich man owns all of the things that the steward, the manager, has been wasting. And it's not going so well. Because it doesn't tell us how, but it has come to the manager, to the rich man's attention, that this manager has been squandering, has been wasting his possessions. When you entrust something to someone, do you want them to waste it? No, you want it to use it wisely. You want it to use it well. You want it to be used for a purpose, not just squandered away. So how does that bring us to the issue of stewardship? What does wisdom have to do with? How does it apply to this idea of stewardship? That you and I are managers. That we have a God who owns everything. And He has given us moments and days and hours. He's given us breaths. He's given us opportunities. He's given us resources. He's given us bodies. He's given us minds. And He's invited us to live this life as stewards of everything that He's given to us. To live in a way that's pleasing to Him. And what I would suggest to you this morning is that idea of stewardship and wisdom are intimately connected. In fact, there's a passage in James chapter 1 that I bet you is familiar. James writes, "If you need wisdom, ask our generous God and He will give it to you." How many know this verse? Do you know this verse? James chapter 1 verse 5, where it promises that God will give us wisdom if we ask for it. Yeah, my goodness, this is a verse that I go to all the time and ask God to keep His promise, to give the wisdom that He promises. And it's interesting, it goes on. He will not rebuke you for asking, but when you ask Him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. So if anyone lacks wisdom, ask God and He'll give it to you. But He says, make sure your faith is in God alone. And then it goes on. Do not waver, for a person with divided loyalty is as unsettled as a wave of the sea that's blown and tossed by the wind. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. And then these words, their loyalty is divided between God and the world. They are unstable in everything they do. Holy mackerel. Doesn't that describe us? I mean, honestly, doesn't that describe the struggle that you and I face? The reality of living in this world and wanting to achieve success by the standard of the world, wanting to achieve and possess and own and live in comfort by the standard of this world, and at the same time being called to devote ourselves wholly and completely to our God. By the way, maybe that sounds, again, like I'm drifting into a money sermon. Returning to God is not financial. God does not need our money. He owns all of it. But He goes on to say, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that you will not even have room enough for it. Well, what's that mean? Maybe you're saying that sure sounds financial. But here's the key, dear friends. You could search, you could read the entire Bible from Genesis to Revelation, if you're a speed reader this afternoon. You could search diligently in every passage that you read, looking for the opportunities and the places in the Bible where God invites us to test Him, to see if He's really there, to see if He's really faithful, to see if He does what He says He does. And in the course of reading that entire Bible from cover to cover, you will discover one solitary place where God says, test me. And it's right here. Right here in Malachi chapter 3. So you have to say why, right? I mean, of all of the places and all of the things, of all of the stuff, maybe it's in praying, or maybe it's in parenting, or maybe it's in some other way. Why does God say, trust me, when it comes to our offerings and our tithes? And here's why. If I were to ask you at this moment, could you tell me within a millimeter, or maybe even within a centimeter, how long your hair is? Unless you are bald, I'll bet you can't do it. But if I ask you how much money is in your wallet, I'll bet you'll come pretty close. And there's a reason for that, right? We depend on the money we have. We depend on our financial resources. That's what we live on. And so we need to know what we have so we know what we can spend when we leave church. We need to know what we can do if we're going to the grocery store or going to a restaurant. And we need to know not only what's in our wallet, we need to keep track of other finances so that we can budget and prepare. We know what's coming ahead and we can be in a proper place with the proper resources. And we take great care to pay attention to our financial resources. And so then God comes along and He says, hey, by the way, I want you to take the first tenth of everything that I pour into your life, and I want you to return it to me. A tenth? 1/10 of my entire budget just disappeared. How in the world am I going to survive? And that's why God says, test me. Because what He's asking you to do is impossible. And it's not just impossible like saying a prayer and just hoping something happens. It's not impossible in some other intangible kinds of way. It is impossible in paper and numbers, in dollars and cents. It does not make sense. And yet God says, test me right here. And see if I can do what I promise.